All right, we talked about death last week. Let's talk about heaven this week. What's the correct perspective on heaven? Look, there are so many misunderstandings about heaven. I don't really know where to begin. I think I'm going to start with angels. You see these Christian posts all the time that say, oh, heaven gained another angel today. No, it didn't. If your loved one who knew the Lord died, heaven did not gain an angel. Now, what you might mean is they were really a great person. They were like, when you're a kid, you're like, oh, my kid is such a little angel. Maybe that's what you meant. Probably that's not what you meant. But we don't become angels. I don't know where we get that idea. I think possibly we get that idea from 1 Corinthians 15 or 2 Corinthians 5, talking about the resurrection of the body. 1 Corinthians 15, I think specifically, where it says that the flesh and blood body doesn't inherit the kingdom, but we will become like angels. We don't become angels. We just get a glorified body that is more like angels' bodies than like our human bodies. And so the first thing you got to do is quit thinking of your loved one up there in heaven with like angel wings or whatever, that they're a new angel. They're not your guardian angel. They're in the presence of the Lord. And so that would be really helpful. The second thing I think that's really important is we tend to picture our loved ones as having gone to heaven and looking very much like they do now, only a little bit more, vigorous, a little stronger, a little more stout, and your grandpa who died or my grandmother, for example, who died when she was 93, we have the tendency to go, she's a little stronger. She's got that spring in her step again, and she's up there and she's cooking and she's baking her cookies for everybody again. And we tend to think like that. Again, flesh and blood, these bodies don't inherit heaven. Your loved ones who are with the Lord are with him in spirit. No one gets a glorified body until Christ returns. They're with him in spirit. They don't have this form that you think that they have. And what we do is we go, oh, the 8-year-old who died or the 98-year-old who died, we think of them as a kid in heaven and all the kids running up to Jesus. Guys, your eternal soul, whatever you want to call it, your spirit that lives forever, it's not an 8-year-old soul. It's not a 98-year-old soul. You get a glorified body. Like the Bible tells us in Matthew 22 that in heaven you're neither married nor given in marriage. And so Michelle, who is, I mentioned a couple of times ago, is my favorite person on the planet. She's not going to be my wife in heaven. I'm not going to go up to her and be like, hey, remember those great kids we raised? Remember the years we had together? We're different than that. It's a different experience completely. And this goes back to our first and second lesson that we want to believe in Jesus until it bumps into something we don't like. We want to believe the Bible until it bumps into something we don't like. We have to quit making heaven this cartoon, this fairy tale that it's not. There isn't anything in the Bible that would indicate that that we look like this, right? That I'm going to be recognizable as Ryan. And so the other thing, people talk about the mansions, and this was a big deal for me when I was a kid, man. It's one verse. It's probably not the best way to translate it. So the King James version of this verse in John 14, Jesus says, I go to prepare a mansion for you. If it were not so, I would have told you. And so another translation says, I go to prepare a room for you. That's a big difference between a room and a mansion, but let's address that really quickly. Because when I was a kid, I was told everybody gets their own personal mansion. And I got to tell you, I loved it because in my head, my mansion had a swimming pool and it had a slide from the top floor. I had a multi-story mansion, top floor all the way down, a spiral slide into the pool. It was going to have shelves of candy. Like that was my mansion, right? That's what I pictured. Here's what's interesting about that. In my Father's house, he says, are many mansions or are many rooms. That's probably the better translation, many rooms. In my Father's house are many rooms, and I go to make room for you. Or I go to prepare a place for you. Now, here's what's interesting. I was taught, and Audio Adrenaline, or was it the Newsboys who sang Big, Big House? I think Audio Adrenaline. In my father's house is a big, big house with lots and lots of room, a big, big yard where we can play football. That was kind of my theology, which is really crap theology. It's not the case at all. I remember I had a pastor once who said, man, I can't wait to get to heaven and go fishing with my father again and eat buttermilk biscuits again because I have I'm allergic to wheat or whatever, so I can't eat buttermilk biscuits anymore, and I'm going to have my grandmother's buttermilk biscuits. And like, here's the problem. So let me get back to the house first and then I'll finish that. But in my Father's house are many rooms. I'm going to go and prepare a place for you. If it were not so, I would have told you. We tend to read that as mansion. We tend to read that as a room. You're going to have your very own space in heaven. Throughout the Bible, when Abraham, for example, in the Old Testament says, I don't have an heir in all of my house. He's not talking about his physical house. He's talking about his family line. God says to him, I'm going to give you a son through whom the whole world will be blessed. And Abraham says, I don't have an heir in my entire house. In my family, I don't have an heir. When they talk about the household, when Abraham invites Lot into his house, he's not inviting him into a house. He's inviting him into the family. So when Jesus says in John 14, in my Father's house, in my Father's abode, in my Father's family, there's plenty of room. And I'm going to go make room for you. Right? This is what he's talking about. He's just said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. He's not talking about mansions. He's talking about room in salvation. We have all these wacky ideas of heaven because we've misunderstood different verses. We think 1 Corinthians 15, when it says that we are likened unto angels, that means we'll be angels. We think in John 14 that Jesus is making us each our own personalized mansions with our own mailbox out front. Mine's going to say R.T. Dalglish, and the people will be able to send me thank you cards for whatever. Remember that song, who was it? Ray Boltz or something like that said, thank you for giving to the Lord. And there were all these people in heaven going up to their Sunday school teachers and saying, thank you for giving to the Lord. No. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, Paul says, the one who plants is nothing, the one who waters is nothing. Only God who causes the growth is something. Only God matters. We're not going to be in heaven thanking our Sunday school teachers. We're going to be in heaven going to the feet of Jesus. It's Revelation chapter 5 saying, worthy is the Lamb who was slain. We have got to get this perspective out of our mind that heaven is about my mansion and about me eating my grandmother's cookies and about me going fishing with my great-grandfather it's not that. It is the presence of the Lord. It is life abundant. It is the fullness of joy. I'll tell you what it is. It's Psalm 16, verse 11. Don't hold me to that. I think it's verse 11. The last verse of Psalm 16. In the presence of God is fullness of joy. In his right hand are pleasures everlasting. That. And the reason we think about grandmother's cookies and we think about fishing with grandpa and we think about hunting with dad is because in our mind, those are the highest pleasures we can think of. In our mind, those are the most wonderful things we've ever tasted and felt and experienced on this earth. So we think, oh, that's what heaven's going to be like. Listen, our experiences of joy on this earth pale to the comparison of the joy we'll experience in the presence of God, rightly enjoying God. We have to quit making heaven just earth 2.0. It's the fullness of everything. It's the fullness of God. It is knowing God. It's 1 Corinthians 13. Then I will see him, and then I will know him fully, even as he fully knows me. I'll fully know God. That's the perspective we have to have on heaven. And we've got to, now listen, some of you, these last two have maybe been the hardest ones we've talked about so far, because some of you are going to be like, well, I still want to think about it like my grandmother in heaven, and she's waiting there for me with her fresh banana bread. Why? Biblically, why? Why is that your perspective? Why are you relegating your grandmother to an eternity of baking? Why can't she also enjoy Jesus? We have to have the correct perspective of heaven, and it needs to be a biblical one. That goes back to what we talked about the first couple of weeks. Let's keep talking about this. Next week, let's talk about the correct perspective of our life. Remember, Paul said to live is Christ, to die is gain. Let's talk about what that means to have the perspective that to live is Christ. And we'll talk about that next time. Thanks for watching.